From 13 ABC, Conklin and Company, with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First, with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
Morning, everyone, and welcome into Conklin and Company. Today on the program, Romney on the attack in Toledo. Is his message being heard? Can the likely GOP nominee win Ohio? My conversation with the former Massachusetts governor, Blade politics writer, and Cumulus Radio's London Mitchell. Tom Troy from The Blade will join us in Take 3 today. But first, the potential intruder that really threatens the billion-dollar sport fishing industry in the Great Lakes. It is the Asian carp. Word recently that DNA from the fish has shown up in Lake Erie and Sandusky Bay. So the question is it here? And what impact will or could it have? Dr. Jeffrey Reuter heads up the Ohio Sea Grant Program, or the college, and Stone Labs from the Ohio State University, and he joins us this morning. Thanks very much for coming in.
Great to be here, Lee.
So really a pleasure to meet you. And you've heard so much about the Stone Labs up there on South Bass Island.
That's exactly right.
And boy, what a place it is. And made a lot of news this past week or last week when the word that DNA from the Asian carp had shown up in Lake Erie. Sandusky Bay had previously shown up Lake Michigan, was it, in one instance?
Yes, yeah, at Lake Michigan. We would expect, if you're going to see it, we would expect to see it in and around Chicago, coming up through the Chicago River or the canal there.
There were barriers, or there's a major...
There's an electric barrier there,
right.
But really, in order to really keep them out, you'd need to have complete separation between the Mississippi drainage and the Great Lakes drainage, and right now the only barrier is an electric barrier.
There was an AP News alert. I mean, this was a big deal when word that this DNA had shown up. But that was last year, right?
Right. The samples were from August of last year, and it's really, in many ways, it's good news that it's August of last year and we haven't detected anything since then. We haven't found any adult Asian carp. In the pictures that were on the screen a little bit earlier, those were the silver carp. There are 4 species of Asian carp. The jumper is the silver.
That we've seen. We rolled this in. Jonathan, you can roll this video. We've seen the video of the fish that actually jump into the boat. We've heard so much about this here. Is this typical of this fish?
The kind of image that you see right there is that's pretty common in the Asian carp. When they're disturbed by an outboard motor, they often jump like that. And these fish can get quite large, up to 50 pounds, so they're reasonably dangerous when they're jumping like that.
We've heard of fishermen who have actually been, or boaters who've been hit by these fish and injured. Yeah. The bigger issue is it that they thrive on plankton, which the fish need.
It's a great question. It's a carp, so it's sort of a warm water form. There are 4 different species. The silver that you see right there is a plankton feeder. So it's literally going to swim through the water with its mouth open and eat the algae and the small microscopic life that's in the water. And that's the base of the food chain. So that's going to harm the other critters and the other fish in the lake that need that. And they have been in many places where they have inhabited. Shortly after they move in, they basically take over and occupy about 50 to 90% of the fishery biomass.
Yeah. And I know the media tends to get labeled with trying to scare everyone, and but what kind of impact, really, Dr. Reuter?
Yeah.
Can this fish have, if eventually it does make its way in big numbers into the Maumee River, where we said it actually could thrive there? Yeah. And then eventually into Maumee Bay, Lake Erie.
Yeah. Well, because it's a plankton feeder, it's going to have a lot of plankton. And they need large tributaries to reproduce in, to spawn in. They're going to spawn in the large tributaries. So then you need to compare what Lake Erie's like compared to the other Great Lakes. Lake Erie is the southernmost, the shallowest, the warmest of the Great Lakes. Also receives the most nutrients from agriculture. We have the most agriculture in our watershed, the least forest. That makes it the most productive. So Lake Erie produces more fish each year for human consumption than the other 4 Great Lakes combined. Also, the largest tributary to the Great Lakes is the Maumee River. So if the fish would get into the Great Lakes, they would do best in Lake Erie. And we also have the largest fishery in the Great Lakes, so we'd have the greatest impact. the largest sport fishery, the largest charter fishing
And
business.
we've talked to a charter captain that said, yeah, this would be, well, it'd be disastrous if indeed it made its way into Lake Erie in great numbers.
Right. You can't catch them hook and line because they're plankton feeders. They're not going to go after a lure.
Does it scare you at all? I mean, for the future of the lake, or is this something that we dealt with zebra mussels how many years ago, right? I mean, is this akin to that?
It's
more serious?
I would say that it's more serious, but it's a different issue in this case. What people often overlook is even with the zebra mussel came in, we found the first one actually up at Stone Lab in October of 1988. A year later, the density in the Western Basin had reached 30,000 per square meter. Since the zebra mussels come in, the biomass of walleye in the lake is about 30% of what it had been. We're still going to have walleye, we're still going to have perch and smallmouth bass if the Asian carp come in. But it's very likely that the majority of the fishery would be Asian carp, and so the size of the walleye population, the perch population, smallmouth bass would be much smaller.
I mean, potentially disastrous for so many
Economically,
people who depend on the sport fishing industry for their livelihood.
Exactly.
Yeah. You've been at Stone Labs for 30 years now.
Yeah, over 40 years.
Wow,
actually.
40 years. 71. Pardon me.
Right.
71. Are these some of the things that you look at? Zebra mussels. The potential for the Asian carp. Does it go in cycles? There's this, then there's this, then this other challenger we have to deal with. How's that work on a decade-long basis?
Well, you know, there are issues that we thought were going to be big issues. A number of years ago, back in the 70s, we were really concerned with the Asiatic clam. That was never a big issue. And then we became very concerned about possibly the tube-nosed goby. Not a big issue. And then the round goby came in, and we weren't really concerned about it, and it surprised us. The zebra mussel came in, and I was very concerned with how it might proliferate. But quite frankly, I never thought it would be as dominant as it has become. So yeah, the big issue for us now, probably the most important one, Asian carp is one that we're trying to prevent, but we're really struggling right now with the nutrient loading and the harmful algal bloom issue.
And that's something that we addressed last year, where the problem was really prevalent on Lake Erie. Improved this year?
Much improved. Last year's bloom, or the amount of harmful algae in the lake, was 2.5 times more than we'd ever seen before. This year, based on the fact that it's been so dry, we haven't got as much phosphorus, which is basically the fuel for these blooms. There's much less out there, less than 10% of what there was last year. So there's simply not enough fuel there to allow a large bloom to occur. We're projecting it would be less than 10% of what it was last year.
When was, and I know I'm going back and forth here, when's the first time you heard that the Asian carp might be a threat? 5 years ago? 10 years ago?
Probably 10 years ago. The real concern started coming up about 8 years ago, and we've learned a lot more, and we've watched what it has done in various places in the Mississippi or the Illinois River, and as we've seen the impact that it's had, that has raised our concern considerably.
It appears that it has been, that concern has been heard at the federal level. I mean,
yes,
there's much discussion on what to do about this, but you talked about the electric barrier. What else can be done? Are there other avenues in which to pursue?
I think we're trying to investigate every possible avenue right now, and obviously shipping in and out of the port of Chicago and barge traffic in and out of the port of Chicago up the Mississippi is very, very important. And so if you were to go back to separating the two watersheds, the Great Lakes from the Mississippi, as it was back at the turn of the century, that would be the best thing to do, but that's economically very challenging.
Right. You can see where that'd be real tough. We appreciate your time, and would like to have you back on just to talk about the Stone Laboratory. I mean, it's an incredible place. You need to go to the website, Ohio State University's Stone Laboratories, and what a drastic, stark difference from being in Columbus to spending your time teaching and going to school on South Bass Island or Gibraltar, the Gibraltar area out there. It's got to be amazing.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I really do.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Dr. Jeffrey Reuter, the Stone Labs and Ohio State University. When we come back, a conversation with Mitt Romney students.